Hi, everyone. I have a wonderful guest today. Her name is Judi Grunwald, and Dr. Grunwald has spent 40 years as a speech language pathologist working with individuals with communication disorders. And for 20 of those years, she's helped people who have sustained traumatic brain injuries. More recently, she's become a life coach, continuing to work with traumatic brain injury survivors, with their families, as well as other individuals who are interested in keeping their minds active and healthy. And it's very interesting to me, speech pathology, because I went to Emerson College, graduated there, did not take any speech pathology courses, but they are well known as one of the only, if not they were the only, I don't know if they still are, the only ones to offer a doctorate in speech pathology. So I'm really anxious to talk to Dr. Grunwald. So welcome, doctor. How are you this morning?
I'm great today. Thanks, Gail, so much. And please call me Judy.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Judy, and call me Gail, of course. Now,
Absolutely.
it's very unusual what you've done because there are a lot of life coaches out there, but there aren't a lot of people who are working with people with traumatic brain injury, and also their families, because of course the families need to know how to deal with them and how to work with them in the future and so forth, and of course to keep them active and healthy in terms of their minds. So let's start with the very beginning. How did you decide to work with traumatic brain injury survivors? I mean, was that a conscious choice, or was that something you fell into, or what's the story behind that?
Well, interesting. You should put it quite that way because fell into is exactly what happened. I had been teaching for about 10 years at a local university and decided I wanted to go back into the clinical world. So I did what everybody else does at the time when there was no internet, and I looked in the newspaper and there was a job. So I went to the interview. And although I explained to the boss there that I did not have any background in traumatic brain injury, it was something that I was interested in. And after all, I am a clinician. I had done plenty of other things in speech pathology at that point. So she hired me. She gave me an opportunity. She helped me to get some training. And I have to tell you, the first day I walked into this program, I said to myself, "You're home. This is where you belong." It was an all-day program where clients came and they participated in groups, and we did all kinds of other activities, all to develop their brains and help them to get healthy again. And I loved every minute of it. So that's how it started.
That's so interesting because I have to tell you, whether there was internet or not,
Yeah.
going in the newspaper and finding a job for a speech pathologist is not a normal thing. I mean, they really didn't advertise for that kind of person even years ago. So that's a miracle that you even found something like that. So that is destiny.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I definitely think it was. It was the universe at work.
so, we talk and we hear a lot about life coaching. What is life coaching to you?
Well, I actually did take coursework in it. So, what they taught us, and what I believe to be true, is that when they compare it to counseling, which a lot of either people will say to me, if I tell them I'm a coach, either they'll say, "Oh, do you coach soccer?" Or they'll say, "Well, is that just like counseling?" Obviously, the soccer piece is not an option, but um, the counseling part is often compared to coaching. And counseling is different in that it starts in your past, in your history, and works you up to the present to see how you got to where you currently are. Coaching is very different than that because it starts at your present, and we're looking at where do you want to be? Where do you want to go in your life? And the life coach is the person that creates accountability for you, supports you in all that you do. And as you try to get to those goals, it helps you to clear the obstacles so that you can get there. So it's a very different mindset when you go into coaching.
Well, I'm glad that you explained it that way because I have, and this is very interesting because my sister's a psychotherapist, but I have a lot of problems accepting going back into your past to
Uh-huh.
try to get you to where you need to be now. I do know many people who hang on to the past, and I do know many people who are being ruled by people who were in their life 20, 30 years ago who are still controlling them, and they're not even alive anymore. However, I love the idea of where are you now and let's go from here. I just think that's exactly what people should do. I mean, you can't change the past. You can only shape the future. So why keep the past controlling you? So I love that idea. So how do you find that life coaching is different than speech language pathology, and yet you're still working with the same people who you had in, your speech pathology practice because you were working with traumatic brain injury survivors and you still are. So, how is it different?
Well, it's different in a lot of ways, actually. First of all, speech language pathology is a healthcare profession. So we're much more medically based. And specifically, as a speech language pathologist, I work with people who have communication and thinking disorders. And that would be the brain injured population. They've had an injury to their brain, so it causes them to behave and think differently. And that's the piece that I bring in from that end. The life coaching piece is just what I was saying, is that, okay, we're looking at you working with a new brain and working in a family system that is now very different than what it was before your injury. So how do we put this all together? And so the life coaching piece is the part that helps to link everything and helps the whole family to come forward from this awful event, this catastrophic event that's happened in their lives. Because clearly the brain injury affects the whole family.
Well, that's another thing that my sister only treats families. In other words, she says if you don't have the family, you can't make a huge improvement. So she only works with a family.
Yeah.
So how does that? I mean, how do you do them together? Do you work with them separately and then bring them together, or how do you do that?
Well, the answer to your question is yes.
All of the above. All of the above.
Right, exactly, exactly. So I can work individually with the individual with the brain injury because they need specific training in what's happened to them. We do a lot of let's try and get some recovery here, but also let's learn some compensatory strategies. So that can just be a one-on-one situation. But when it comes to how are you going to function in your life and in your house and with this group of people that you live with, then it's together. It can certainly be that. But there may be times that I'm just working with the family because, what I often see is true is that a family really doesn't have a good grasp of what this brain injury actually means to this individual. And, it's so different in every situation that it really takes time for them to see, to understand, and it may mean that I have to work with them just alone so to help them get through it.
That's very interesting because I can see where it would be, it's a difficult situation to live with something like that for the person and for the family.
Right.
So it takes, I think, it takes a certain kind of person to go into speech language pathology. I mean, you have to have a lot of patience and you have to have a lot of, ability to hone in on just one specific thing. So, what made you go into life coaching?
Well, for the reason that I saw what was happening with, after I worked with the client, and I already did some work with the family because it's, as you say, it's absolutely necessary to do that. So getting those coaching courses under my belt gave me more tools to use to work with them, and it was tremendous for me to have that understanding, that additional piece that helps me to work with that group. The other thing that it encouraged me to do is to look at, in general, because the fact that we're all worried about our aging brains, maybe I can help that too. Maybe I don't have to restrict myself to just people who have had brain injuries. And that's kind of another thing that I do is work with those of us. I mean, we're all aging. We're at some level of aging. So how are we going to do it and maintain our health and wellness? And that was my new goal for this new piece of my life.
Well, they've had so many new discoveries and studies on the brain
Yeah.
that are changing everything. I mean, they're changing the way we think about the brain, how we treat the brain, what we need to do to keep the brain healthy, and so forth. And I don't think they still really understand why some people, for example, have a healthy brain at a older age and some people don't. I know my mom lived till 99 and a half, and she was sharp as a tack, giving out orders till the very last day. So I certainly hope that's going to be me. But uh, the whole point is it's still kind of a mystery. But you coach people on helping their brains to become healthier.
Right.
How do you do that? I mean, some people think, well, my brain is deteriorating. How can it get any better? I mean, once it goes, it goes. So how do you coach people on helping their brains become healthier?
Well, first of all, I have to call you on something that you just said. As we age, our brains are deteriorating. So let's kind of stop thinking that way.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with it. I'm saying that that's what the
That's
philosophy out there. I
yeah,
that's
yeah,
not absolutely.
exactly. And interestingly enough, the language that we use to talk about these things in our own lives makes a huge difference. Our attitudes towards this, keeping a positive attitude about your life and your aging, has a tremendous effect on how you do. In general, I use the integrative health philosophy. I also have achieved a certificate in integrative health and lifestyle, and it's all about self-care, how we take care of ourselves on a daily basis. For example, and it's also about keeping our lives in balance, which is enormous. If you are a person who works 80 hours a week and gets up in the morning and rushes out and doesn't have a morning routine that is healthful in some way, it's going to affect you and your brain. All of these things ultimately have an effect on how your brain is working. So, with that in mind, using that approach, we can think about many, many ways to keep that brain working and keep it as active as your mom did. And the fact that you're in the same family she is certainly positive for you. It's
Well, it's interesting because my sister and I laugh because I did my hour and a half of exercise this morning. And
good.
yeah, I do it every day. And my sister exercises too. She just had some surgery and she's recovering very well from it because she does take care of herself. In fact, she's 5 years older than I am, and they told her that she had the body of a 60-year-old. But
Wow.
the thing was, we laughed because my mom never exercised a day in her life and she lived to 99 and a half, sharp as a tack. And we joke because she always says, well, she grew up on chicken fat and Crisco, but it was different chicken fat and it was different Crisco. In fact, I don't even know if Crisco's still on the shelves, truthfully. But
Yeah.
of course, a lot of people say it is different now because of all the hormones our animals have. But uh, what are some tips for making one's brain as healthy as possible? Even, we talked about positive thinking, which I practice all the time, and exercise and eating right, which I try to do. And but it's interesting. I have to tell you something, Judy. I work a lot of hours, and not as many hours as I used to, but I work a lot of hours. I'm very intense about what I do, but I love what I do. So to me, it's not work. I mean, it's a play in a certain way. Yes, I have deadlines or things that I have to do. I mean, I write a lot and those kinds of things. But when I think about what would I do if I wasn't doing this, I can't think of a thing because I do everything I want to do anyway. I mean, if I want to go to lunch or dinner, I go. If I want to go to the theater, I go. The whole point is I love what I do. And I think that's a major positive in how you age. Although I certainly know people who have been very successful and very happy and very in love with what they do, and yet they suffer dementia and Alzheimer's. And so I'm curious about all of this. So give us some tips on making our brain as healthy as possible.
Wow. What you're describing in your life, having that happiness that comes to you, is a huge, huge plus in terms of keeping that brain healthy. The only way that I could could think to explain, and you know, that this is just my opinion